correcting the leaders in public is the standard. Not doing so is what is seen as backwardness. Where do we go? Confusion. People say this is democracy. We will tell them democracy also allows for free sex. Democracy allows for consumption of usury. It's a free world. As Muslims, are we going to do that? We are not going to do it because it is not in line with our deen. I used to tell people this, that some people have forgotten that we are also humans like them, and we have feelings the way they also have feelings about things that are happening, but we are only restricted by those ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ forbidding us from coming out publicly to condemn our leaders. So the point I am making is there are so many confusion. FITNAH to shubuhat. Things that are clear in the deen will no longer be clear due to fitnah. Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah ta'ala said, "Ittaqu fitnata li'alim al-fajir." Said, fear the fitnah of a scholar who is not righteous. This is an example of fitnah to ashubuhat. What is known before, what is established before, is no longer a known fact. What the scholars will regard as thawabit, things that are not debatable, has now become mutagayyirat, things that are debatable. This is very important. Okay, for example, let me give another example of fitnah to shubuhat. Okay, evidences abound in the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that towards the end of time, the Prophet said, you are going to see things that are disgusting in your leaders. The Prophet said, "Innakum sataruna athara." You are going to see disgusting things. They are going to cheat on you. They are going to do all sorts of evil things. Then the Prophet ﷺ was asked, when our leaders become so corrupt, what do you advise? What was his advice? He said, "Isbiru." Be patient with them. Do not come out openly against them. In those days, we used to believe that it is part of the tenet of Islam that a leader should not be reproached publicly, and that is the standard. But today, that's no longer the standard, because not even all people who subscribe to Sunnah agree over that. Some of them will say, no, this is our own environment. Our environment is different from those other environments. That was the argument before. Now, the argument is, it is even permissible. There is an authentic or very authentic traditions from the Prophet prohibiting going against the leader in public. But today Muslims do it. To the point that when a scholar who subscribes to Sunnah mistakenly does that, a student come out and justify it. Okay, where do you go further? Okay, for example, myself as a student of knowledge, if by mistake I condemn the government publicly, what is expected of any of my lover is to come out and say, although we love him, but on this one he made a mistake. Today it's no longer like that, even in the fold of Sunnah. That is the nature of fitnah. Each time you want to attempt correcting what is wrong, a lot of confusions will be. You are going to be surrounded with a lot of confusion, such that the intention might even be misinterpreted. One envy Sheikh ni, one Sheikh, but he has made a mistake. So the point now is, some of the thawabit, the companions of the Prophet, it was their habit to tell their younger ones that part of what we learned from the Prophet was never to go against our leaders in public. You can admonish them. The Prophet said, Man indahu nasihatun lidhi sultan. Whoever has a word of admonition for the person at the ends of affair, for the person in authority, the Prophet said, Fala yubdi alaniya. Do not make it public. And that is that is the Sharia of Allah. And it's also very commonsensical. Common sense appreciates it. That leaders are not to be opposed, they are not to be guided publicly. And I'll give an example. Okay, if my father, certainly if my father is a bad person, for example, will it be normal for me to come out publicly and say it during this lecture that my father, rahimahullah ta'ala, was a bad person? Will that be right? Will I be considered a good child that I come out publicly to wash my daddy's dirty linen in the public? Would that be acceptable to anyone? Will it be acceptable to the MD that the gate man would come out publicly and say the MD is not getting it right? Will that be acceptable to anyone? But the Prophet said, Kullukum ra'i wa kullukum mas'ulun an ra'iyati. Each of you is a shepherd. Each of you has been given a certain authority, and you are going to be asked by Allah. Okay, leaders have been given the authority. Our parents have been given the authority. Why not come out publicly and condemn our parents? Is it not democracy? Somebody would say, well, Islamically that is wrong. We say Islamically condemning the authority in public is also wrong. And in other places, it is permissible. In the West, you have freedom to talk to your parents anyhow. As a child, you can tell your parent, you are wrong, sir. You are wrong. Not even with sir, you are wrong. I disagree. Daddy, don't be silly. That is acceptable in Western society. Is that acceptable here? Is it acceptable that my child will tell me, Daddy, don't be silly? And somebody will say it's an advice. That is to say that these things are commonsensical. The Prophet has told us that whoever leads Muslims and leads them in a wrong manner, the Prophet has promised him punishment before Allah. But he told us it's pure. Be patient with them. So, but today, correcting the leaders in public is the standard. Not doing so is what is seen as backwardness. Where do we go? Confusion. People say this is democracy. We will tell them democracy also allows for free sex. Democracy allows for consumption of usury. It's a free world. As Muslims, are we going to do that? We're not going to do it because it is not in line with our deen. I used to tell people this, that some people have forgotten that we are also humans like them, and we have feelings the way they also have feelings about things that are happening. But we are only restricted by those ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ forbidding us from coming out publicly to condemn our leaders. So the point I am making is there are so many confusion. FITNAH to shubahat. Things that are clear in the deen will no longer be clear due to fitnah.